Okay, so we are back once again from the Airbnb in Dublin, Ireland. It's been, feels like 3 weeks we've been on the road. It's more like 2, but still. We're on the road, and Sensei can still no longer be a part of, well, not no longer. He's not dead. He's just been taken to the grave. He's away from me now. He's got a missus. No, Sensei's still on his honeymoon. And as of right now, I am in Ireland, so it's tough to do the podcast. But we're keeping the show on the road with kind of a comeback to where, you know what I'm saying, the Wade concept started, and something me and Sensei have been doing a little more recently, covering the MMA scene, UFC 290. As this video goes out, it will be live streamed on the Wade Concept channel. So go check it out tomorrow around, I think, 3 a.m. Dublin time, which is, you know, let's try to do the 10 p.m. West Coast. I don't know. You guys will figure it out. I'll make sure I put all the stuff in the on the posters and everything. But let's talk about predictions for UFC 290. It's a stacked card. We're going to stick with the main event outside of a couple of fights because I do want to talk about one fight specifically on the prelim card, and that's Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler's retiring. Christian, I don't know if you know that. Robbie Lawler's last fight is this Saturday. After, guess how many years in the UFC? 22. I don't know if it was in the UFC, but as a professional, 22 years as a professional mixed martial artist. That is almost your age. He's been fighting as long as you've been fighting to live, bro. Hey, Christian come from the mean streets of Chi-Town, you know what I'm saying? Chirac over here. So Sean Brady's fight was canceled. Robbie Lawler, Nico Price. I'm going to say, listen, the MMA game, usually you don't go out on top. Just like your girl does in the bedroom. But it's usually you go out knocked out, submitted, and just father time tapping you on the shoulder. There's been a couple of guys get away with it. Habib, George St. Pierre. But I think Nico Price, who, as people know, is a psychopath, like in the cage, he's a madman. And Robbie Lawler still looks good as far as like his technique is still there. He's always in great shape. He's just been on the short end of a lot of fights recently. So I'm going to... Conventional wisdom says pick the younger guy. Nico's 15-6. Robbie's, you know, had a rough go of it, but bounced back a couple times. I'm going to go Nico Price here by a decision. And Robbie gets to ride off into the sunset. Main card, though, this one is what we look for. Main card is starting off, Christian, with Better's own Jake Paul prodigy, even though he's older than Jake. Penn State's finest. I'm going to just keep going until you guess. He's not a penny. He's not a dime. Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel is fighting. His opponent fell out. I think just a couple days ago. So he's got a guy, Val Woodburn. What about that name? It's almost like Donovan Steele. I don't know who that is. Val Woodburn, 7-0. I saw some of the guy's highlights. He's a big, ripped up, jacked up dude. Looks like he's a little stiff as far as his actual striking, but has knocked some guys dead. I think he has 5 or 6 knockouts. Bo's going to have to, I don't know. Again, I didn't see the guys wrestling, so let's see what Bo does on the feet here. I know he's been moderately tested in his last fight. Got the submission. People thought, you know, oh, maybe it was a nut shot. Maybe it wasn't that got him into the position for the takedown. But I think Bo is an otherworldly talent as a grappler. And I've been saying since I saw him started striking as a professional, I went, oh, okay. Yeah, this guy can actually fight. It's not just a grappler coming in to learn to strike. He's picking up striking fairly quickly, and he's already an elite level grappler. I think he has a great future at 185, but I don't want to see him rushed. I don't want to see him push too quickly, because the last thing you want to see is one of those Sage Northcutt stories, right? Or name the MMA fighter that's been pushed. Aaron Pico. Who? Patty is another one. Even though Patty is kind of, they've dialed it back on him a little bit, and I think they know. But there's some guys that got pushed way too quickly. I want to say, I could be, I can't even remember the guy's name now. But there's you've heard these stories where guys get pushed too quickly, the Conor McGregor effect, because they see that star power in them and they want to put them in the limelight. I mean, Paige Van Zandt, you've seen it. Bo, I don't want that to happen to. I want him to be able to get his sea legs here in MMA. Again, he's only, 3-0? He's 4-0. So the guy hasn't had a ton of experience. And again, 7-0 in MMA, you cut your teeth pretty quickly. You're not going to get a ton of easy fights, but this is a good test for him. It's a guy that, like I said, from the footage I saw, has big-time power. And if you're Bo, probably going to turn this into a grappling exchange pretty quickly. We know Bo is his submission game is pretty nice. So I'm going to say Bo Nickal by submission, late second round. Jalen Turner versus Dan the Hangman Hooker. Jalen Turner, the Spider. I love this matchup for him and for Dan, to be honest, because both guys at 55 have been awkward matchups for a lot of guys because of their height. Jalen and Dan are around the same height. I think Jalen's actually a lot taller, but they both have that stylistic matchup to where we're probably going to get a war here because both guys are very good on their feet, great kickboxing. Dan is just going to mix it up with a ton of guys. Like he does not care how many, like go back to that Dustin Poirier fight. It was an absolute all-out war. And I think that fight really did change the trajectory of Dan Hooker. I think that may have just changed him permanently as a person. Like that fight was so devastating. I remember watching it from a hotel room in Vegas when I was trying. You guys, on the main channel, you guys probably remember I took a trip down to Vegas and stood in front of the UFC PI to try to get Dana to give me a job. That was during that trip. And I watched a man's life change before my eyes, years taken off his life. So I think that's been part of the reason for Dan's struggle since then. And I think that it continues here. I think Jalen Turner surprises some people and fleshes out a little bit of that potential that we've seen from him. At kind of an up and down career, but I think he puts on a show here. I think it's hard to stop Dan Hooker. I think he beats Dan Hooker by a decision. And then we have not even the co-main event. This isn't even the co-main, but it would be a main event on any other card. Robert Faye Sensei Whittaker versus Drakkar. I don't know how to say his last name. People say Duplessis. People say Duplessis. People say Duplessis. I'm going to say Duplessis. Duplessis. I'll say Duplessis. Drakkar Duplessis and Robert Whittaker. Now, this one is a big deal for multiple reasons. One, Duplessis has caught the ire of the middleweight champion, Israel Adesanya, for saying he is going to be the first champion to bring the belt back to Africa, or in some way insinuate he's going to be the real African champion because he's from South Africa. And that rubbed guys like Israel Adesanya and Kamaru Usman the wrong way, obviously being, from Africa as well. But this has been a grudge match kind of now building, especially on the part of Israel. And to be fair, Drakkar did a great job of putting his name out there. But the problem is, standing in his way is Robert freaking Whittaker, a man that doesn't lose to anybody not named Israel Adesanya. So now you have this idea where you're looking at potentially the trilogy. Does Izzy even want to do that fight again? Because he's won the first fight, won the second one, but it was close. And then you have this third fight. It's almost like the Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski thing all over again, where you have that one boogeyman, and it's like the Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington thing until Leon came along. He's like, Izzy's lapping the division. He's getting a little bored, so he wants some fresh blood. So I can guarantee you he wants Drakkar to win this. Problem is, I don't know if Drakkar will. Because what Drakkar Duplessis does very well is he's a pretty decent grappler, has some kickboxing experience, did fight in K1, right? He was experienced enough as a striker, but it's not the level of a guy like Robert Whittaker. I think this will come down to, a lot of people talk about Drickus's gas tank. Going back to the Darren Till fight, both those guys look like hobos trying to fight over a sandwich. It looked rough. But apparently his coach said he's been fighting with a deviated septum for the last couple of years. I think with this fight being 3 rounds, it's not going to be as big an issue as people think. It's going to be interesting to see. Robert Whittaker's grappling defense is phenomenal. Phenomenal. But with that bladed stance, he does leave himself open for single legs and things like that. I do wonder how Drakkar approaches this, because if you try to just straight grapple Robert Whittaker, he's going to piece you up. As much as I'd like to see the build-up for Drakkar and Israel Adesanya, I still think Robert Whittaker is one of the best in the world, and I don't see him getting dethroned here. I think we're going to get a trilogy with him and Israel Adesanya. I'm taking Whittaker. And again, I'm going decision here. I don't think we're going to get a lot of stoppages on this card. There's too many high-level matchups on this card to have a ton of stoppages, in my opinion, because the guys are so evenly matched or so skilled. And, styles make fights as well. I don't think Drakkar will put himself in positions, unless, again, he does get tired, for Whittaker to piece him up and eventually get him out of there. But I'm saying Robert Whittaker. I'm saying he does it by decision. Then we come to the co-main event of the evening. Brandon Moreno, your flyweight champion, putting the belt on the line versus Alexander Pantoja. I got to be honest, I could be sleeping on Alexander here. 25-5. I've seen so much growth out of Brandon Moreno that it's very hard for me to pick against him now. Granted, a lot of his fights at 25 that have stuck in my mind have been against Davis and Figueiredo, but at that division, there needs to be people that come up like Pantoja and convince you. And this is probably a fight that's going to be more close than I'm making it out to be, and you guys can call me a casual for this one, but I think the champ stays in Mexico. The belt stays. Give me Moreno. It's going to be, anytime the 25ers get in there, they have unlimited gas tanks, great technique, a ton of scrambles. Brandon has shown he's pretty good everywhere. His boxing's a little unorthodox, but he gets the job done. He's got a great jab. And notice I'm not talking about Alexander Pantoja because I don't know a ton about him. So this may be my casual take on the card, but I'm sticking with the champ. Give me Brandon Moreno. And because I don't know too much, I'm going to have to go another decision here. And then we get to our main event of the evening. Now this one's interesting because in one corner, even though this is an octagon, you have Alexander Volkanovski. Volk, the man that people are saying, and rightfully so, is potentially the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet right now. After the Islam fight, how he showed himself there, wiping out the 145 division, and Max Holloway, who was considered to be climbing that ladder to be one of the greatest 145ers and fighters ever. Having the resume he has, he may not be the best 45er yet, but he's on his way, and it's really tough to pick against him because the city kickboxing style is so hard to prepare for because they are elite pick and poke strikers, and Alexander Volkanovski and Izzy have taken that to another level where not only is their timing great, they can pick you apart from the outside, but power, technique, skill, precision is starting to be all put together to where they're flatlining dudes. They're dusting fools, right? And we've seen that Alexander Volkanovski's grappling ability is on the level of one of the best in the world in Islam Makhachev, at least in an MMA sense. Being trained by Craig Jones has been a big help for him, and it's going to continue to be that, I'd have to think. One of the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world. But what's interesting about this fight is that on the other side, you have Yair Rodriguez, who is probably the most unpredictable fighter I've ever seen. Just, you can't, you watch him fight, and it's like he is spamming video game buttons, but doing it in a way that's like he knows what's coming, but he's just testing a bunch of stuff out. He's basically fainting out in a video game every single move he has. Taking a sledgehammer and just smashing the buttons, but somehow it just works, right? He's one of the most skilled strikers I've ever seen. Taekwondo background, flashy kicks, but they're not just flashy, they're devastating, right? The difference in what I see from a guy like Yair Rodriguez and like a sport karate guy like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is, again, the unpredictability and the venom behind which he throws. I think he's not afraid to be taken down because even off his back, he's shown to be dangerous. Slick jiu-jitsu, but also slick elbows off his back, vicious intent with his shots. And he has everything. His kicks are like whips. He throws elbows from angles you've never seen, back fist punches into roundhouse kicks, into 540s, into switch kicks, into flying knees. Watch what he did to Josh Emmett. Who does that to Josh Emmett? Who? We just watched Josh Emmett go to a 5-round war. I wouldn't say a war, but we watched him go through 5 rounds, and Ilia Topuria pieced him up, beat him up pretty bad. But he didn't put him out in 2. Who's doing that? Yair Rodriguez is doing that. Like I said, he's vicious. And if there's anything that you worry about with Volk, it's being caught with a shot he doesn't see, because it's happened a couple times, and he's been dropped a couple times for it. Max caught him with the head kick, dropped him. Chad Mendez dropped him. Brian Ortega was slick with his submission game. Probably should have popped the head off him like a Pez dispenser, but there's something about that unpredictability of Yair Rodriguez. There's something about it. It makes him probably the most dangerous fight at 45. But even still, the more complete fighter is Volk. And it was a long time ago, but when you watched someone wrestle Yair, I mean, again, it was a long time ago, but go back to the Frankie Edgar fight. He put him on his back for 5 rounds and made him like it. Pause. But he did. He did. He was like, he could not get off his back. And I'm not saying that Volk is the same level of grappler, but he is better at that than Yair. Has more ways to win. If this becomes a strike for strike fest, I could see Volk getting into some trouble. Absolutely. Because even Islam hit him with shots that he wasn't prepared for. And that's Islam Makhachev, who's not very well known, but again, styles make fights. Volk prepared for more than grappling, but I ain't gonna lie, I like the way that Mexican UFC belt looked. Did you see that? That custom design Yair had? They had it custom designed with like the Mexican flag on it, like LS Teca stuff. It was dope. I would like to see it. I just don't know if Yair is quite there yet. Give me Volkanovski in another shocker by decision. I don't like Yair is he doesn't put it, he's not reckless to the point where he puts himself in position to be knocked out a ton. And he's so unpredictable to try to be like, oh yeah, Yair by like inverted fucking backward elbow, like he hit Korean Zombie with. Like, no, he can do all that stuff. And Volk can be caught, but the percentages say Volk, because he has more ways to win, because in that octagon, you do have to be able to adapt. And if he's getting those legs just slammed into the side of his body, and he's getting pieced up on the feet, he, out of the 2 of them, can change the fight. So I'm going to go Volk by decision. That is my full picks, man. UFC 290, I'm super excited for it. Once again, I'm going to be live streaming over on the Way Concept channel. I'm going to try to find somewhere here in Ireland that has halfway decent internet. UK, I don't know. Is Ireland in the UK? Yes, right? I don't know. Regardless, Europe. What's going on with the Wi-Fi? What we saying? Every Airbnb, every hotel, ass, buddy. We're figuring it out, though. So tune in over there. YouTube.com/The Way Concept. We will be live Saturday morning here in Ireland. Or no, Sunday morning here in Ireland, I think. And then Saturday night on the East Coast, West Coast in the U.S. Make sure you guys subscribe over here. Sensei will be back. I know this was a longer video, and you guys are probably tired of listening to me. So, I don't know what happens on UFC 290, but in one day's time, guess we'll find out.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. Yeah.